Hey everybody, got another video here for you. This is, I know it looks like a build video, but it's not. This is the results of the ultra narrow neck joint experiment, which I was trying on the Scarab here. This thing. And the basic idea is that you have no heel at all on the neck. You just maintain your neck profile all the way to the end of the neck. And then you have just this little extension coming off the body in order to attach the neck to it. And it works, but it doesn't work for this material. I mean, look at how much that stuff flexed. This basically, it behaved the same way as one of these kind of guitars. This thing right over here. If I can stay out of my own light. This guy right here. That's the curved triangle. It's a basically, it's a stick-type guitar with a different shaped body, and this particular one is a Floyd Rose. And what it is it's made out of thinner plywood, reclaimed stuff, and it too does this bend thing up at the heel joint. But it's got a wide enough, and so these guitars with these thin bodies that tend to bend under tension, as you bring them up to tension, what happens is they behave a lot like a bow, as in a bow and arrow, where the guitar body is the bow part and the strings are like the string on the bow. And since you're trying to get the strings at a precise distance from the bow wood, you can't tell what's going on until you bring it up to tension, because this thing bends as you bring it up to tension. But you can eventually get it so it's all like, all nice and everything. The way this one is pretty much. It's not absolutely perfect, but it's pretty close. And, but the thing is that with this one, it's with like the other ones, once you bring it up to tension, it's pretty stable, and it doesn't move around a lot. With this one, it's still so flexible. I mean, look at this. You just press on a little bit, and you can actually see the body moving in relationship to the strings. So yeah, this is not beefy enough. It still has enough flex in it that just, if you tuned it up like this and then you just lift it up like that, it throws it out of tune. Or if you tune it up, this way, or supporting it down here and not having any weight on the neck, and then you set it down, it goes out of tune. It actually will just setting the, I mean, you can see when I pick it up and you set it down that it moves a little bit. But yeah, just setting the thing, tuning it up on the bench and then picking it up will throw it out of tune by as much as a semitone. Or tuning it up and then setting it down on the bench will throw it out of tune by as much as a semitone. So yeah, this is definitely too flexible. I mean, look at that thing move there. So now, that's only this particular case, which is 15 millimeter versus 3/4 ply. And there, you obviously, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this thing apart, use this as a template, widen this out. Your neck is typically 56, so let's call it 60 rough cut for a triangular heel. And so just sticking your hand under here and seeing how much extra space there is. If I can get it to show it. Just seeing how much extra space there is right now. This problem again. Okay, so that's what it's like when you're gripping the heel, the handshake, as Phil likes to call it, on Know Your Gear. But when you're right, let's see here. Okay, there we go. Guitar's sitting on my head. Okay, this part right in here, you don't even touch that. And so you can get wider here. And you won't feel it, you won't notice it, it won't be in the way. And I think you can go actually get as wide as 40 millimeters without it even really like getting in the way of your hand. So in a triangular shape, you can get as wide as 40 millimeters, I suspect. Now this is 15 mil wide here. I think that this would probably work in Bubinga or maple or oak. It might even work with pine. It might bend some, but once it had taken shape, it would probably be stiff enough that it wouldn't go out of tune just by picking the thing up. Which is, I was wondering if I would eventually reach a point where I started making guitars so minimalist that they were too minimalist, and I think this is definitely one of the limits. Is if the guitar is so lightweight, so flexible, that it goes out of tune just by picking it up off the bench or setting it down. If that changes the tune, that's too flexible, that's too thin, basically. So yeah, to fix this, another body with a wider triangular neck heel. Maybe let's see, this is a 15, so I doubt a 20 would work in a triangle on a plywood, to tell you the truth. So maybe step it up to a 30, which would make it roughly half as wide as the neck itself, and then go to a 30 millimeter wide triangular heel, and that might work. That would probably be stiff enough that it wouldn't go out of tune. It would probably still bend a little bit when you first brought it up under tension, but that's just a matter of trial and error with the shims until you get it so that everything is nice when it is under tension. This is running 8s, and according to the calculator on Stringjoy, this had an Ernie Ball 8s clocks in at about 78 pounds of total load, total string tension on the guitar. And yeah, so I've ended up with, like, I believe 6 mil and 7 mil on the bass and treble sides respectively on this. Another thing I notice is that with this very narrow contact area, you can have issues with the neck not wanting to seat perfectly parallel with the body, with it tilting this way or that way. So that would be another place where a wider heel would be an advantage, because it would give you a wider surface to avoid that kind of issue. Now another way you could fix this would be you drill a 10 millimeter hole from like here down to like maybe here, and you insert a carbon fiber tube, and that would stiffen this up enough for this kind of a joint to work. But obviously a better solution is you get some real solid wood, and you join it, and you either get like a one piece or you join up, a multi-piece body blank, cut out your shape, go with something, like I'd say maybe at least a 20 mil wide triangular shaped heel in pretty much any wood. Even a pine would work, I would imagine. And you go that way, and then you'd have no issues, I wouldn't think. So let's see. All right, that's all the spiel about this part. Other things that happen on this build, or lessons learned. Well, yeah, this build is almost done, but the next it's too flexible, so I'm going to make another body for it. So it's not done yet. But other things that have come up so far. Let's see. This is an eBay neck, one of these infamous copper dot 24 fret super shredder type necks that have been available for about the last 3 years. They've been holding at around $45, and they're really, really nice necks. And they're becoming harder to find and slightly more expensive these days. But there's been a couple times when, you know, it's almost like buy them by the dozen. They're so nice and cheap. There was a time when I was getting these things for like $35 a piece with free shipping. And for a ready-to-go neck, that's a really good price. Anyway, converting this thing to a Steinberger no head, I forgot about the 0 fret, and so I cut the headstock off like a nut slot's width too short, basically. And so I had to put a piece of wood back on the end of it, glue a piece of wood back on the end. But when I put it in, the screws I used were, the screws that it came with were like way too big for what I'm doing here. But the screws that I chose, they only went into the repair wood and not really into the original neck wood. And I got it just about here, and then all of a sudden, bang, and the repair wood split. And so I had to take it all apart and CA glue the wood back together, and then fish out longer screws that could actually go all the way into the neck wood, and drill the holes deeper and put it all in that way. You could actually, the screws haven't been painted yet to match, and that'll come later. And all the repairs and such, it messed up the paint on the bracket a little bit, and putting the strings in and out and stuff scratches it up too. But that's just because it's $1 paint from Lowe's, basically is what it boils down to. So yeah, if you're converting a neck to a no head, don't forget your 0 fret. Actually, about the 0 fret, these things are designed to use the 0 fret. And there's the original nut slot there, you can see. And so then it's a question of, well, you know, I've got this gap here, what do I do? Well, okay, there's a number of approaches you can use in order to make this conversion. The traditional way to do it would be this wouldn't be on yet, and that wouldn't be in there, and you just have your nut slot, and then the rest of your tail, of what's left of your headstock. And you'd be cutting this at the proper length for this part to fit this Steinberger nut, and at the proper angle for the Steinberger nut. This backing plate here actually slants in this direction slightly. So you cut off the end of the headstock correctly to match this thing. And then you've got this like gap here. And the traditional way to deal with that would be you would get some fretboard type wood, and you would fill that and you know, chisel or cut or saw or shape it to match, and shape and sand to match. And then you would get your fret slotting saw and you cut a 0 fret slot, and you get your fret wire and you plop in a matching fret wire, and you plop in a 0 fret. just like that. Other ways that you can do it is you can basically do the same thing but fab up your own stuff using just a piece of metal rod stock instead of an actual fret. Let's see, what are other ways that you can do this? You can take the nut and just grind or sand off the back part for clearance for these guide teeth or whatever you want to call them, and just leave the nut in there. You can even leave the slots on the front side of the nut because they won't really interfere with anything. The nut is just working as your 0 fret. And then the other option you can do is what I did here, and that's a brass knife edge, or brass or some kind of metal material. And basically all you do is you just take a piece of brass, and it's just like cutting a brass bridge, and you cut a brass nut, 0 fret. It doesn't need slots or anything. But it's essentially you're cutting a little brass knife edge nut, and then you just glue it up against the back end of the fingerboard, and you're done. And so, yeah, all I did was I took a piece of brass and cut it to approximately the right size and everything, and then just sat there with a piece of sandpaper and just kept sanding it down, and then checking it with basically with straight edge to compare the height here versus the fret plane, and I got it so this is just ever so slightly higher than the fret plane by half a mil, let's say, at most. What I do is I take a straight edge. I think I was using like crimson straight. No, I was using just a regular straight edge, and you pull it back and then feel how much it dropped when it fell off this knife edge, and that way you can get a feel for how much higher this is than that plane, by the plane formed by the frets, by the top of the frets. And it's 1/10 of a mil. It's just barely noticeable. So, let's see. That covers 0 frets. And the broken nut. Yeah, this is cool. When I was finishing the guitar, this has the wipe on. No. I gotta stop saying wipe on because then you think it's a wipe on product. It's not a wipe on product. This one is brush on shellac, which has been rubbed on with paper. But if you look, I didn't sand it. I left it bumpy. And because I didn't sand it till it was smooth. I sanded it down, like maybe just hit it with 1,000 just to kind of smooth over to even it out a bit. So it feels pretty smooth, but it's still bumpy. And when I did this, I was surprised because it felt very slick, just the way it is. Even though it's bumpy, it still feels very slick. And I thought about it, and I'm formally trained as an engineer, so I took physics. It was like my best course is physics. I always get A's in physics, easy. And so, I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, well, it shouldn't be faster. And then I thought about it again the next day, and I was like, wait a sec, I forgot that you don't really hold the whole weight of the neck in your hand. If you were supporting the neck in your hand, then yeah, a bumpy surface wouldn't be faster. But in a properly balanced guitar, you're not supporting the weight of the neck in your hand. You're just putting your hand up against it. And how hard you squeeze is up to you. Now, if you have a poorly balanced guitar, you're supporting some of the weight of the neck. But above and beyond that, how hard you squeeze is up to you. And what it is that the drag on this surface depends on how hard you're pushing on it. At least, that's the only thing. You can't, well, yeah, no, hold on, stop. Okay, it's how hard you're pushing on it and how slick your fingers versus this surface is, the coefficient of drag. And there's things you can, and I was going to say that all you can change is how hard you push, but you can also change the coefficient of drag by by applying things to the back of the neck or to your hand. Perfect example is talcum powder. You put talcum powder on your playing hand, and you put talcum powder on the back of the neck, it's going to reduce the friction, and you'll be amazed at how much faster you can make high-speed, like full octave, full bar chord changes. You'll go from like 160 BPM to over 200 BPM just doing that, just because you're reducing the friction. So here what's going on is it's how hard you're pressing, the coefficient of friction, and the surface area. And the bumps reduce the surface area. And so, yeah, it is actually, I think it's a little faster than a flat finished clear coat. So, yeah, that's the other interesting thing. And then the only other thing that was special about this, which is results to be passed along, was the idea for the volume control, where you would turn up the volume and then at the end it would be an on-off switch, there would be a blast switch. And it worked, but it only worked if you turned it the wrong way. So in other words, you'd be turning it counterclockwise, would turn it up and then turn it to blast switch on. It could be wired that way, but you couldn't wire it so that turning it clockwise did that. And I think that covers everything for this video. I just wanted to pass these things on. I'm going to redo this body, like I said. So, until the next one, everybody, have a good one.